Hello. Hello. Hello, my name is Brooke and I'm making this video. It's kind of a bonkers story that I didn't think I would be sharing in this depth and putting it on the internet, but in the last few years, my journey with art and theatre and painting has really led me down a completely new and strange path, but a beautiful one. It's beautiful now. There was a time when I was getting quite scared by it, but it's resulted in something beautiful, which is this multicolour maths thing that has quickly taken over my mind and my life in the most beautiful way. But in retrospect, realised how many other things have been linking to it and leading up to it. And a lot of it has been, I've caught a lot of it in my journals and books, and finding other things in other writings by people such as Carl Jung, which was someone that I didn't know anything about, but all about dreams and consciousness and the subconscious and collective unconsciousness and things like that. I also do theatre, and my a zebra character called Deborah the Zebra, has played an important role in this kind of dreamscapey world, and kind of been a vehicle for me to discover things. So yeah, here are some of my journals that I'm not reading the whole things, but it's in just like significant pages. Since I was a teenager, kept journals, and I never thought I would be showing these to people, especially on the internet. My first journal was this one when I was 16. I just started writing poems and songs in it. At the time, I was a Jehovah's Witness. I'm no longer a Jehovah's Witness now. It's what started as little like poems and stories like this and drawings. And in here is a poem of my first little picture book. And then, so I was 16 when I wrote that. And then when I was around 19 or 20, I made it into a whole series of picture books for my nieces. And then as things were getting more complicated, lots of pictures. Things became more complicated with my involvement in the religion and my sexuality and things, and my writing got a lot smaller, but I was writing all the time in my journals, and then that moved on to this, and my writing became so small. I don't know whether that probably won't pick, I don't know. Anyway, my writing had become so small in trying to process things, and I don't know, it became so micro. Eventually, long story short, but things became complicated, and trying to really understand what I was part of, and with my sexuality, who I was. So I started studying like the Bible more and the publications we were given, and I made things like these charts that were the books of the Bible and all of the prophecies and the dates, and trying to work out how they all fit so that I could visually see the like history of it all. One of the drawings that I did in here was this one. I felt like there was some sort of pattern. I know it's not like a new original thought, but I just had this moment of feeling that there was a pattern between the structures of things, and I was like, there's an atom and the proteins and the molecules to whatever extent, and then the human body and the leaves and the way that the planets moved. So I drew this down, and that was something to do with trying to prove that to myself. And then I went and preached in China. I eventually got excommunicated in 2016. One of the last thing I wrote in here, it said, thoughts since getting disfellowshipped. I think Jehovah, or God, is found in things like the colour violet in mist, in Monet's Morning on the River Seine. And I remember seeing that painting and just being like, what is that colour? I don't really know what exactly that colour is. Like, it's a bluey white violet. Or in the chords of the lark ascending. He or they have to be felt, not understood, like we try to do by reading books about him. I think I get it better that way. Anyway, so that was that. So once I had been disfellowshipped or excommunicated from the religion, I found myself in this new life, and two of the things that I used to kind of rebuild my life and build a community and make friendships with people was music with my guitar and painting. And quite early on, a portrait that I painted was of a girl called Hannah, and I at the time used to wear this little earring, this little hoop earring. And on it was a little blue bead from a bracelet of my niece's. So I wanted that to be part of the painting, and I put it all together in the composition, and it really sort of helped me start a journey into the world of art. Around that time, I was writing a story called Mr. McGlump into a musical. A friend of mine invited me to go on a writing retreat in the countryside and just kind of relax and just write and focus on writing. Around that time, that was about 2018, a few of my friends had started getting into like yoga and meditation and stuff. And yoga and meditation were things that Jehovah's Witnesses weren't allowed to do because it was seen as maybe connecting to the spirit realm in a way that is dangerous. So I'd never really done that or explored that. But I started doing a little bit of it just for like exercise and stuff. And one morning, I think it was a Wednesday morning or a Thursday, we both got up quite early, at about 5 o'clock in the morning, to go and listen to the bird song in the morning. So we went and listened to the birds, and then she went back to bed and I stayed up. And so from that was about 6 o'clock then in the morning, and I thought, oh, I'll do some yoga and some stretching and some meditation. So I went to this little greenhouse with like a gravel path and did some stretching, and I sat down with my legs crossed. And just from my ignorance and my lack of real actual understanding why they did it or why it's done, I put my fingers together like this on my knees, and I had my fingers like that, and I shut my eyes, and I squeezed. So like if it squeezed this side, I squeezed this side, and my eyes as they were closed would go from that's as it would like squeeze and push it across this way, and then squeeze and push it across this way. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. That was the idea. And I was doing it, and I kept doing it really slowly, all the way side to side. And it felt like there was like a pencil like tip, or not felt like, but it looked like there was like a pencil tip on my eyelid going across as it went across. And it was like a pond skater. And I wrote it down in here. I had my hands on my knees and I started squeezing my thumb and middle finger together, and with my eyes shut, I looked side to side as I squeezed my fingers and thumb. It started making lines across my eyes like a little pond skimmer bug on the pond, and it slowed right down, eventually stopped in the middle. Oh yeah, so like it went like this, and then eventually I slowed it right down and it stopped in the center. And then this is where this whole thing, I think, really kicked off. A big white / purple iris spread out from the center like this, of my sight, with a really black, defined, it was like cut glass pupil in the center of it. And it kind of pulsed in brightness, and I was a little weirded out by it, and I started breathing funny. It seemed to last only briefly, and then it dissolved, and I thought I'd open my eyes slightly because I could see a path. But what made me realise it wasn't actually my eyes open was the fact that it was like a slate path with red gaps and grass in between each slate. And then it kind of, so I had my head, and I could feel my head was down, and then there was this slate path, and then my head started lifting up. And as it got up here, oh yeah, by the way, the weather outside was quite dark and overcast. So it wasn't bright outside, but I had my head down and I lifted it up. And as I got to about 45 degrees up here, everything turned yellow, completely yellow, as in my whole head turned yellow, not just my normal field of view, but everything around me. I was in yellow. And at that point I was like, what the hell? And then my head like slowly looked down, and I've got a drawing of it here. Like the colours changed from like green to blue to orange to red. So it just went like this. So red at the bottom, and then orange, and then bluey, green, yellow. And then as I went right up to the top, and I tilted right back, and it felt like my head like dropped right back. Everything went white. And I felt like the best way to describe it is like if you have a cartoon character, or like SpongeBob running around, or like any kind of cartoon, and they delete the world. So like the setting is gone, but the cartoon remains. It felt like that. It felt like I was just nowhere. I was nowhere. And then I kept going up and down. These colours went like vroom, and come into like a sphere, and then they'd go out again, and then vroom, and they'd go out again, and vroom, and go out again. I was just really enjoying it, and I felt this like, it was like this shudder of good feelings, whereas at the beginning it was quite scary. And when I first saw the purple iris, it felt like I was looking into the eye of a dragon, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's demons, it's demonic, and this is bad, because I think although I'd left Jehovah's Witnesses, I still had a lot in my mind that I had grown up with it and the fear of it, so I was a bit scared of it. And then a chicken in the garden next, like just to my right, made a noise, and it shuddered me out of it, and it all just sort of like dissolved and went like dark, as like when you have your eyes shut. And I thought, oh my goodness, like that was crazy. What was that? And I thought, maybe the sun has come out and the sun is shining through the roof of the greenhouse. As I've been moving my head up and down, I've been looking at the sun and then not looking at the sun. And then I opened my eyes, and it was so overcast, it was so dark, and it was darker outside than it had been in the bright of my eyes. And then I just burst out laughing, and I rolled on my back. Yeah, I think I was just confused, and it was just hilarious. And then I really needed the toilet. I really needed to wee. So I got up and went for a wee in the garden, and certain leaves of the flowers were on the grass in the lawn were like glowing green. And at this point, I will just say I wasn't on any substances at the time of any of this story. I went back into the kitchen, I went back into the house, and my friend and some other people were having breakfast. And my friend said, are you okay? Like, where have you been? And I looked at the time, and it was around 9 a.m. So I'd been there for 3 hours in my mind, but it felt like 20 minutes at most. And then I had a really deep sleep. I just slept for ages. I thought I just sort of like clicked something in my brain, and maybe that is it. This whole story as well is, I'm not claiming to know anything. And as it goes on, I'm not trying to be like, believe this thing that's happened to me. And I'm just telling it because it's just fascinated me what's happened, because it's resulted in something understandable with the maths. So that was the beginning, and this colour thing was incredibly beautiful. And I tried for a good while after to bring it back again. I tried doing the finger thing, like the squeezing. It just didn't come back. It just never came back. But it was definitely something that it made a big impact in me. Skip a few years. I had made some animal characters for my nieces. A giraffe called Martha the Giraffe, part of a musical about a girl who finds a giraffe in her garden, and the giraffe's friend, which was called Deborah the Zebra, who actually is here. So that was my first little drawing of Deborah the Zebra, although she was called Deborah the Zebora. Deborah the Zebra. Now she's Deborah the Zebra. So I'd made these characters, and then a few years later, I felt that I really needed to tell this story about what had happened to me and my family, and how it affected my family when I was excommunicated, and just the things that had happened to different friends of mine as we grew up. And in this story, I knew that I wanted to transform into something. I thought it was like a drag character, but as I was doing it and performing it, I realised that what made most sense was to transform into Deborah the Zebra. And transforming into Deborah the Zebra, truly, at first I felt like it was just like a really beautiful, fun thing to do, but it really has now, I think, guided me and given me a kind of parallel universe to be creative and express myself. So as part of this video, I felt like it's only right that I also transform into Deborah in this process too. So here comes Deborah the Zebra. In January 2023, I woke up one morning, like 5 o'clock in the morning, and my heart was pounding. I was a bit scared, and then I realised, I'm not scared, I'm actually excited. Like, my heart is like really racing because I'm really excited about something to do with Deborah. I think I must have had a dream that I didn't quite remember. At this point, it looks a bit scary. Also, I'm not the best makeup artist, as you can tell. This is not some kind of like makeup tutorial. It does what it needs to do, especially on stage when you're far away, but up close, I probably look completely a mess. So I woke up and I was like, I know the story of Deborah the Zebra. I know where she's come from and what was happening in her universe. I went to turn on the light to write it down in my journal, in my book, but we'd run out of electricity in our house, so I had to light a candle, and I felt like Charlotte Bronte or something in the, I don't know whenever Charlotte Bronte was. And I wrote this story. Well, I wanted to write a story, but it came out as a poem. And it just came in one go. And it has formed the basis of this whole new show that I'm developing. I bet in a minute the doorbell's gonna go, some sort of package that I need to like sign for or something. Before you add a second layer, you have to give your first layer time to dry. So this poem introduced me and took me into the world of Deborah, and I just sort of followed it. Somewhere not too far from here, on a level plain of land,
where the sky is wide and clear, if you reach and take my hand,
there live 1,000 creatures, some humble, others grand. And if you look down at your feet, a herd of zebras stand. So yeah, Deborah the zebra became this whole part of my life and a whole like kind of alter ego. And I kind of started writing letters to and from Deborah in my journal when I was trying to work out what to do. Anyway, we did birthmarks loads and loads and loads, and it was really fun. Actually, quite quickly, it started impacting my sleep. And for like a good year and a half, I was really struggling. What's so funny is that I'm better actually doing this while singing and dancing around. This looks horrific, so bad. Anyway, my sleep had got really bad and I was trying loads of different things to try and sleep better. And I came back to meditation just as a way to help me sleep again. And then spring 2023, I was staying at a friend's house. I went and sat in their garden early in the morning because I'd been awake for ages, and I did some breathing, and then out of nowhere the colours came back. And then the thing that was different this time was that they were shapes. They were these triangles and hexagons and things like this. There were different shapes and triangles and like a star. And then a week or so later, just before I went to bed, I meditated and I saw a very bright and clear white 8-petal flower like this, along with these, it looked like the edge of lace with like coloured dots in, but this 8-petal flower became really poignant. And then I went to visit a friend in France and I took this journal with me, and it was blank pages. And on the first page, I drew the flower. So I drew the flower, and I know this looks bonkers, and I know that it's I know that it's strange, but I'm just using this, just being playful with the art, and I hope this doesn't look scary, because in my mind it's really beautiful. And this is the first time I've painted this on my head, but I just thought I just had that idea and I'll just go with it. Anyway, I drew this flower down, and then this is where it got a bit strange, because someone that I'd met in London mentioned Carl Jung, and I didn't know anything about Carl Jung. I know I like Oliver Sacks and I like neurologists and neurology because I wanted to study nursing, but ironically I failed the maths test to get onto the university course. Anyway, so I didn't know about Carl Jung, and then this guy sent me some photos, no like message, no like context, just photos. If you're watching this, I don't actually have your number, but if you are watching this, please email me if you were that guy in London somewhere. I didn't look like a zebra when you met me. He sent me these photos, and at this point it freaked me out big time. And one of them was this, and since I've got the book, I haven't read this whole book yet. It's very big and complicated. But one of the pictures was this 8-petal flower with the dots around it. It's called Mandala Sketch 3, August the 4th, 1917. And it was exactly the one that I had drawn, and my original one also had the speckly dots around it, as Carl Jung had drawn it, and that really scared me. It really freaked me out quite a lot. But since like discovering this, researching more into it, I've read the introduction at least, and it's just interesting some things that Carl Jung really struggled with sleep, and like in one of his dreams he's like talking to his subconscious, like, why won't you let me sleep since I am so weary? And then his soul says, you might have noticed by the fact that I have been disturbing your sleep for a long time. So I do know that like Obviously, sleep deprivation can bring up maybe lucid dreaming or something like that. But the fact that you see the same patterns is really interesting. Then he says, I found sometimes that is a great help in handling such a case to express their peculiar context either in the form of writing or drawing or painting. So I'd been drawing lots of stuff over the years, and drawing my dreams became a big part of it. And also Jung talked about how it can look a lot like psychosis. I feel like that's what I felt the last few years, that I was kind of unstable psychologically, but now I feel completely like settled because thanks to the maths, the result of the maths. But the journey was not smooth sailing. It was quite scary. Then this begins the journey in Paris. As I said, I'd seen these like sort of lacy things with coloured dots in. Really beautiful. They kind of like came across from the left, and stars, 6 and 5 pointed stars, but they kind of move as well. They kind of move and glitter. So it was kind of hard to know exactly, but a 5 pointed star and a 6 pointed star, and they'd move around. And just a thought now, where he says about like psychosis, I feel like or just the fear of it, it's from not talking about it. And which is why, like, I've been talking to my friends, and then I did a talk at an exhibition the other week, and the response was so loving and like embracing, and like, no, that you're not unstable, like you're just experiencing a lot of things with your dreams. So that's why I've also decided to make this video, because all of these synchronicities and stuff, I'm fascinated to see the study of the subconscious. But I know that, as with my theatre stuff and talking about my experience with Jehovah's Witnesses, a big part of it was having the confidence to overcome that fear and talk about it. And using Deborah the Zebra to talk about stuff really helps me express things that maybe I wouldn't if I was just Brooke. So here's the significance of the mouth. So I was in Paris, I'd seen this flower, trying to work out and how maybe these angles that were repeating could repeat in the structure of the face. So I was drawing the way, because I realized also that the stars fit in, the 5 pointed star at least, fit inside of itself as it rotated, because there was this kind of spinningness to these stars as well. And then it came to this drawing. I'm quite an outgoing person and quite talkative, as you can tell, and I'm bald, obviously, so I get cold quite quickly. And I had bought this hat, which I love still. I was wearing it in Paris a lot. Oh, I don't want to get it dirty. I'll put it on quick. So I'd have it on, and then I would like hide underneath the brim, and it kind of made me a little bit more introverted. And sometimes the eyelashes get stuck. So I was in this bar and I was watching this girl play the guitar. As I was watching her play, I was like, I know that her hand is moving and playing the guitar by moving in a spiral quite beautifully. And I was like, okay, I know that through painting like portraits about the Fibonacci sequence and the ratio, and how that moves in a spiral, like in seashells and things like this, and sunflower seeds, etc. And I was like, if it's in the hand and it's in the face, it must be in the whole body. Like, the body must be a spiral, but I'd never seen it in like a spiral. I'd never seen a drawing of the body in a spiral. And I didn't have my sketchbook with me. It was at my friend's flat. So I sat there with my hat on. I was measuring the unit. I was like, well, the furthest point out of my body is my like middle finger. So I measured that unit, that one. And I thought, I think the Fibonacci ratio is like 1.5, 1.6 or something like this. I didn't know exactly, but I guessed. I thought, that's 1 unit, so that's 1. And then the next one is there for 1.5 or 6.6, let's say. So then that's 1, 1.6, and then 1, 1.6 to your wrist. And then the whole length of the hand from the wrist to your forearm, 1, there, 1.6 to there, and then here 1, and then that is the 0.6, the length of your hand, is to your center here. And then this one is 1 to the center here, and then from here 1 to the bottom of the elbow to your groin there is the 0.6. So that is your spiral here. So that was my idea. So I kind of thought that was right, and I didn't have my sketchbook at the time. So then I came back to my friend's flat and I drew it down. I didn't have a ruler, so it's not completely to proportion, but I kind of saw it and I thought, I think that might be accurate. That might be real, true. And since then, I've done a few tests, like to work out an average, and on the whole, I think there is some kind of pattern there. And there are obviously other charts that show that we are all like obviously in proportion, but I've never seen it drawn like this. And I tried searching on the internet to see it like this, but I can't find it. So I got very excited by that. And then the next weird thing happened. The next day or 2 days later, I was walking down the road, had my fluffy hat on still, and a man was sat in the street listening to music, had headphones on and a cap, and was sat on the steps and looking up into the sky, and the sunlight was hitting his face. And I walked past and he said, "Oh, I like your hat." And I said, "Oh, merci." And I walked past. I thought I should go and draw him and test about this star idea, whether it fits in his proportion. And I remember stood for a while thinking, should I go or should I not? And I thought, no, go. So I went back down to him and I got my book out and I said, "Oh, excuse me, can I draw you?" Because I don't speak French. And I was like, "Can I draw you?" And he said to me, he was like, "Arrête," as in like, stop. He was like, "Arrête, regardez," like, look. And then he like gestured down my arm and down my leg. And I said, "Oh, do you like my outfit?" And he went, "No, arrête, regardez." And he did it again. And I was like, "Do you like my jumper?" Because I had like a nice jumper on. And he was like, "No, arrête, regardez." And then he leant into me and he drew a line with his finger. He drew a line across my shoulders, down my arm, down my forearm, down the middle bone of my hand, and then across my finger, like 1, 2, 3, and just went like this into the sky. And I was like, what the hell? And my throat went thick, and I remember my tongue went a bit, it was like I just went into like a little bit of shock. And then my heart was pounding, and I was like, I just said to him, I was like, "Arrête, regardez." I said, "Do you mean this?" And I opened my sketchbook and I showed him the drawing. I was like, "Do you mean this?" He looked at it and he looked at me and he just shook his head, and he was like, and then he pointed at the drawing and pointed at me and said, "Did you draw this?" And I was like, "I drew this the other day. I didn't know this until the other day." He just like shook his head, and that was a complete stranger out of the whole of Paris, of all the people to be stopped by. And then he said in French, or something like this, he was like, "Nous comprenons pas, mais nous comprenons." We don't understand, but we understand. I was like, "Oui, je comprends." And I sat next to him, I was like, what has just happened? So then I was already feeling quite overwhelmed anyway. So then I left and I walked up the hill a little bit further up, and I thought, I need to just go and sit down and be on my own for a bit. And I went and sat in a cathedral, so quiet, and I put my hat on. And then very quickly I had this white spinning star again. And then it kind of like, I looked up and I had this flash as though I was down a well. I was like, I was in a deep well, and there was like a ring, there was like the top of a light, and there was like this garden up there. And then this star started turning into like it was like a 5-pointed fleshy this time, and like pulsating. Pink, blue, white and purple. And it was like whoom, 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 whoom. I drew it down again. And I went back to my friend's flat and I was like, right, what are these images that I'm seeing? And I Googled Carl Jung stars and pictures, and I went through, and that's when I found a very similar fleshy pulsing star that Carl Jung had painted. So then I was researching Carl Jung quotes about images, and then one of his quotes is, "In view of the fact that all mandalas shown here were new and uninfluenced products, we are driven to the conclusion that there must be a transconscious disposition in every individual which is able to produce the same or very similar symbols at all times and in all places. Since this disposition is usually not a conscious possession of the individual, I have called it the collective unconscious. This is evidently an attempt at self-healing on the part of nature, which does not spring from conscious reflection, but from an instinctive impulse." So I was like, okay, this Carl Jung guy is writing about this stuff that I'm kind of experiencing. Just that settling that it had been written about made me sink into it a bit more. Then I went to visit the Monet gallery, the Orangery, where he has his there are the beautiful lily pad paintings. And as I said in one of the early book about Monet's colours being something about understanding the universe, I went to this gallery and I went and was like, okay, I'm going to just stand and look at these paintings and I'm going to try and like meditate with my eyes open and do the breathing stuff. And like by standing really still in front of them, your eyes can like sort of shift view, and you can like pan in and out of the colours, and they kind of like start shifting amongst each other, and it was so stunning. And the lily pads started like, you could, if you swayed, you could make them just a bit like one of those visual tricks that you can do. Anyway, and I met a lady there. We ended up chatting and I told her about all these things, and she said, how funny, I call my sister Deborah the Zebra. I was like, how strange. And then she said, I run a company teaching maths to artists in order for them to translate their designs into patterns for costume making. And the logo of her company was an 8-petal flower. I was like, this is wild. This is bonkers. And along the way, I was drawing all of these, I just couldn't stop drawing these like mandala-y kind of pictures. Then I had this like hum come in my ear, and I started recording them, which was this. And I know it sounds so, anyway, and I googled it, and apparently there's a vibration of the planet. I don't know whether I'm just getting so sucked into this whole thing or not, I don't know. But anyway, that was, for a while, it doesn't happen now, but back then it was. And then another time I was thinking, okay, all of these things are so like lining up and synchronizing, and I was like, I need to read. By that point, I'd got this book, and I was like, I need to read this. There's a lot in there, and I don't know, it's quite heavy, but I need to read it. And it was on my sideboard to my left, and I was sat meditating, or just sat there like breathing, and I was thinking, and I know that my thought was over to my left, and then a voice in my ear, so clear, and I've never had it before, so clear, and it was my voice. It was like, it was right up there, just went, don't get distracted. And it was so freaky and weird, but it was because I was thinking about trying to understand all of that stuff as opposed to just staying like with myself. So yeah, that was strange. And then I had this experience which kind of reminded me of when I was young. For quite a few years, I used to have really bad night terrors. They were terrifying. I didn't remember them, but they were quite physical. And I could always kind of tell that I was going to have one when I was falling asleep, that I had this feeling that my body was expanding, and then I would fall asleep and then I'd have a night terror. Just after this humming stuff, I was meditating, sat down in the middle of the afternoon. I had this feeling that I was expanding from my center, and I drew it down. It was like these two big like orbs of energy, like from my center, coming out and round. And I was like, whoa, okay, I'm really growing, or something's happening. And my housemate was in the next room, so I was kind of conscious that they were there and like pushing and expanding out. And then I think maybe because I was thinking too much about them next door, it stopped. That was really interesting, that those feelings were linked to also falling asleep and having, when I knew that I was about to have a night terror. And then some more things happened where I was meditating and I would have flashes of my hands, and it was like there was like a torch, a flashlight behind my head, and my hands were down here, but there would be flashes of my hands in positions. So I started drawing those. So there were these drawings like this, and a bit more complex ones like that. Then I had this like vision whilst meditating of a man stood like this, looking over a fire, looking down. And these, I think the reason I drew them down when I was meditating was because they were so vivid, and I was kind of sat, so it wasn't like I was asleep, I was maybe lucid dreaming. And then I bought myself a sketchbook that had dots in it so that I could draw these mandalas more, because I just kept wanting to draw patterns. And then this one, I know this is not much, but now I've learnt about geometry, I think I was trying to work out a way that all the circles linked together and became these flowers. And then I had this feeling that I had this phrase come into my head that a leaf is the map of a tree, and I didn't really know what that meant. Yeah, so like pictures and patterns. I just became a bit like obsessed with trying to work out the patterns of things, and compared to my older style of painting, this was so different. And I think maybe inspired by like Monet's use of colour and the fact that he was actually going blind when he painted those giant paintings. I was fascinated with just using colours and exploring. And these are scribbly, but they were kind of becoming a bit mathematical. Oh, and then I had a dream about my giraffe character, and this was an actual dream, so I was asleep, but it woke me up and I was crying, that I was walking along and my giraffe laid her head, and the jaw, her like jaw part here, like sat perfectly above onto my skull, just here. It gave me this like real feeling of like love. And I woke up and I was crying and I felt very good, so I drew it down. And then I had a really, really stunning dream again that woke me up, but like an actual like nighttime dream, and it woke me up. That I walked into a gallery, and it was this giant white gallery, and on this giant throne was this beautiful woman, kind of like a goddess, and she had this beautiful long hair, and she had colours in her hair, and she was quite stern and serious. And so I woke up and drew her. It was just a pencil sketch, but like I drew this down. Yeah, I remember waking up and being like, whoa. It was like it was such a presence that I had met it, and that it woke me up. And around this time, I was performing more of my Deborah show, my zebra show. I always just kind of follow where the story goes. I just let it unfold and follow it. So my zebra character had like completely embraced who she was, flown and exploded and shattered the fabric of the universe. And that's when I thought, oh, she crosses a universe and smashes into me in my universe, in the belly of a whale, and that's how I become Deborah the zebra. So that was like November 2023, and weirdly my emotions, I felt quite down. I felt actually very, very down, just with so much going on, just globally, personally, and being a bit thrown out of whack with what I should be doing in life, because theatre is so wonderful and I love it so much, but it was really exhausting me. It was costing me a lot emotionally and physically and energetically because of my sleep. And then that's when I started, I kind of felt quite pessimistic for the first time in my life. Despite like having experienced really difficult stuff with being excommunicated, I'd always kind of felt hopeful and positive. But yeah, last year I kind of really hit a wall and was just exhausted, I think. And we'd just finished Edinburgh Fringe, doing lots of shows, and I just kind of started questioning what the point of everything was. And this kind of downward spiral, and I was getting really low, and I didn't really want to socialise very much. But it kind of landed me deeper, like down and down and down and down. But where I landed was maths. I actually passed through like feeling like I was like, physics is the answer. Understanding physics was what I needed to do. But then I started trying to read Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time, but realised it was so complicated. And if I didn't understand maths, then that was the main language that I didn't understand, maths. But I not only didn't understand it, I really was I have been terrified of maths my whole life. Ugh, it just makes me feel so anxious. That was where I landed, on maths. And that's when I thought, I just need to learn maths. I just can't avoid it. And I started saying to my friends, I need to learn maths. And they were like, why are you talking about maths all the time? It's not even like you're good at it. I was like, I know. So I bought myself a little maths textbook, and I came back to St Leonard's, and I booked a trip to India, because when I was a Jehovah's Witness, I had visited India while I was like preaching abroad. Visiting India really, really was a massive part of me having a reconsider of what I believed. Before I went to India, I was here for a couple of days, and so this is where I am, and this is the room that I taught myself to paint in and play music and play piano, so here we are. I googled patterns in nature, and the first video that came up was a video, Maths in Nature or something, and it showed zebras, a zebra stripe, and giraffes. I was like, oh, what? There's maths in zebras and giraffes. Okay, I'm in. So I watched it, and the reason it was talking about zebras and giraffes was because it was talking about Alan Turing. He had this theory called morphogenesis, about the maths behind why any natural pattern occurs in nature. Then it went on to explain his work with code breaking in World War II, and how he basically laid the foundations for all of modern technology. Then it went on to speak about how towards the end of his life, which was tragically too short, he was arrested for having a relationship with another man because he identified as a gay man. He was arrested and chemically castrated and eventually took his own life. By the end of this video, I was just sobbing. And then I Googled more about Alan Turing and discovered that he grew up literally 5 minutes away from me, from where I grew up too, which is actually just over there now, where I am, from where I'm sat. And so I put on my shoes and went and walked to his house. And I sat outside his house and I decided to write him a letter. Dear Alan, I'm sat outside the house you grew up in St Leonard's, and it's just round the corner from my childhood home. I've known about you for a long time, but I've never really properly connected to your story until now. Unlike you, I'm not very good at maths at all, but I want to get better. But like you, I was also almost kind of destroyed because of my sexuality. What happened to you and what you had to go through was horrific, and it just shouldn't happen. I feel a lot of sadness and anger about it because it is still happening. But overriding those feelings is a feeling of love. I feel a lot of love for you, Alan. Like I said, I'm not a mathematician like you, but I am an artist. I paint and I write and compose music, and I have used those things to rebuild my life. The universe is an unfathomably beautiful thing, and we are that universe too, and you had a mind that could see it in ways that most of us, can't. But I want to learn. I really want to learn something of what you knew. I feel very emotionally connected to painting and colour and music and sound. If you think of any way I can learn and see and feel maths, then please let me know. And I said, you are at the heart of this story, Alan. I'm going to keep you at the heart of this thing. Not just to show what you gave us, but to show what we lost when we lost you. And hopefully it will bring attention to just how important it is that we stop losing others. There are so many young minds out in the world that need protecting, and I want to help in a way that I can. Lots of love, and thank you, Brooke. So then I packed my bags and went to India, and I packed a small abacus, keychain abacus, 3 dice, and the maths book. I arrived in India and I wasn't feeling too great. I made my way down to a small island called Munro Island. The first morning I got there, I was feeling quite anxious. I had made some connections, small connections with some performers in Mumbai. And I thought, actually, I don't actually want to be on my own. I think I will go and meet those people in Mumbai, and I will take Deborah the zebra, and because I had my costume and my makeup and my headpiece, I thought I'll go and perform in Mumbai. So that was the first morning I arrived on this island. And as I decided I'd leave, I came out of the hostel. This guy said, oh, do you want to go for a swim? And I was like, yeah, okay. So I went back in, put my swimming shorts on, jumped in a lake and cut my foot open. Completely, like a mussel shell went in my foot, and I pulled it out and it was gashed open and blood everywhere, and I couldn't walk. And I started laughing and I was like, well, that is hilarious. I am literally trapped now. Until this gets better and I can walk, I'm trapped on this island. And I felt such a wave of like joy again, and I felt happy. And I gave myself a little tattoo, this little butterfly here on my chest, because I had given my dad a little tattoo of a butterfly in the symbol of hope, like transformation. And I kind of felt relieved that I didn't have to become Deborah again, and I could focus on this maths. And I had this other notebook with me, and I started with just trying to find ways. There's a way of doing finger counting from Korea, and I tried to learn it, but it didn't quite click. And I was trying to do practicing different equations and stuff. I just couldn't get it, and I was feeling stupid again. And I was trying to use like kids apps to like help me get quicker at calculations, but I just felt so basic. I was like, I'm way back. This journey is going to take so long. So I was kind of starting to give up. But then I had my little watercolor set. I was obviously surrounded by these beautiful houses and temples and things like this on this island in India. And I thought, how many colours are there? And at first I painted out a light spectrum here and tried to use their electromagnetic values to become calculations. But I very quickly realised when you mix more than two colours together, you always end up getting something like brown and then black, blacky grey. So I was like, that's not going to work. But then I counted the colours, the main colours that we have. And in my little painting set, so we've got white, black, brown, pink, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. This is just for decoration. This doesn't mean anything. 1 is black, 2 is brown, 3 is pink, 4 is red, 5 is orange, 6 is yellow, 7 is green, 8 is blue, and 9 is purple. And once I realised that we have 10 main colours, that's a number system. Then this whole bonkers journey, and I've made like a documentary about how that actually works. Me and my friend Pratchie have made a documentary. I tried to do calculations by painting them out like this. I quickly realised that I can't do that. Then I painted out this whole table, and then I painted out the times tables. Then I just landed on the idea of circles and circles within circles, like that. Then I started doubting, maybe taking numbers, like the actual digits out of this system isn't right, and maybe I should be using a different shape. But then I was crossing, and I still had a bad foot, and I crossed over the railway track, and I thought, I need to cross the bridge. I think I said out loud to myself, cross the bridge, Brooke, there's an answer over the bridge. And I was like, oh, it's so hot and my foot is hurting. And I was like, no, I should, because I hadn't crossed the bridge, and that had been about a week and a half by that point. So I crossed the railway track, literally after about 5 minutes of crossing the railway track, found this temple covered in circles, within circles, exactly like my drawings here. And I thought, right, okay, that's a sign from the universe to use those.
We were talking about universe giving signs. I don't think there has been much bigger sign than this.
Yeah.
It just matches exactly.
Yeah. And then one morning I had a dream that I walked into a gallery and there were all these beautiful abstract paintings that I had done, but I didn't recognise them. And I walked up to it and I melted into it and I floated up into space, up into the sky, and then all of these dribbling patterns came dribbling down below me, and they looked a bit like this, endlessly like beautiful patterns just floating down below me over the planet and up into space. And I woke up and I thought, that's maths, and it goes up. And then I came out and sat next to the water by the lake, and I was quite excited because I got kind of been given this prompt as to the structure of a calculation. And this was my first drawing. In my mind, I hadn't seen the detail of how this structure worked, but I could see it from afar that it all built on top of each other. And then I paused again and I questioned whether I needed to change the colours from brown to indigo. So I kind of started shifting back and forth on what my initial intuition had told me. Oh, and that's another thing, intuition. I had this thing about intuition and realising that like intuition just means inner tuition, and that you can find ways to teach yourself things. Anyway, I was questioning changing the colours from brown to indigo. And then someone said, wow, it's very Turing-like. I said, oh, what do you mean? They said, oh, it's very like Alan Turing. I was like, oh my gosh, like I wrote a letter to Alan Turing asking him if he had any thoughts of how I could do it with maths and art, and then I had that dream, and now I'm completely immersed in this world. So I started thinking, well, I'm just going to keep writing him letters. So I did. Oh, and then I got excited and I wrote this phrase: art is not only a means of expression, art is a means to understanding. So, and that's what's really, now I realise it's massively a big part of my life, because I can now use art not to just express, but to discover and understand the technicalities and the workings of the universe. It's very exciting and leaves a lovely trail of colour behind you. So I had this question about changing the colours, and I thought, who better to ask than Alan? And I said, "Hi Alan, I taught my first maths class today. I never would have thought I would be teaching maths, but it worked. I think it will work. And I realised that this could help creative minds access maths and therefore jobs and eventually positions of more power to change the world for good. I hope I'm making you smile. I'm not sure what colour to use for 2, whether to keep it brown or change it to indigo. Let me know your thoughts." And then I painted out his birthday in the 3 different ways, with changing the green and changing it to indigo. And then the next day, I was on a bike and I was cycling down this lane, this road, and I was looking for a man who I had met on the island called Pramod. As I was cycling down this road, he stepped out from thick trees and I had to swerve out of the way to like not knock him over. And I sort of like spun around, came around, I said, "Oh, hello." And he said, "Hello, Mr. Brook." And we shook hands, and on his hand was a ring that had 9 colours, and blue and brown were next to each other. And I immediately saw it and I said, "Oh, can I look at that ring again?" And he showed it to me, and I felt this thing of like, oh my gosh, that's a sign from Alan. And what's even crazier is that he said that it was a very special ring. It was called a Navarantha ring, and he keeps it in a box in velvet, like protected, safe, and he can only wear it when he's been a vegetarian, like not eaten meat for 2 weeks, and for specific festivals and events on the island, like religious services. So there's very few times and specific times that he wears that ring, and it just so happened to answer the question. So I know that's reading into stuff, but that just really excited me. I was like, wow, I literally just asked it and there's the answer. So this dream had presented the maths in this vertical way, and suddenly my mind was able to process this information in a much more fluid way and much more beautiful, and being able to recognize patterns. And then I started teaching the kids in the village, and they just understood it, and I was like, where has this come from? What is it? How is this happening? And then one of the kids invited me to their school called Brook International School, and they invited me to go and visit the school, and that was a massive nudge as well to just the synchronicity. So by this time I had this method that was pretty much working. One morning I was swimming in the lake, and a kingfisher flew over my head, and it was so beautiful. And I had this idea. I was like, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a picture book. If I don't write it now, this idea might just fly away like that kingfisher. So I thought, I'm going to stay on this island and I'm going to write this book. So I sat down with my iPad for 2 weeks and wrote this book, Multicolour Maths on Munro Island, as a way of like putting everything that I'd discovered into a book that was like that could teach the method. I put the kingfisher on the front and I dedicated it to Alan Turing. So brought it back to England and took it to Bristol University, a maths professor there called Alf Coles, who suggested and accepted me to present it at the British Society of Research into Learning Mathematics. I went there with my little waistcoat made from the hammock that I would sit in under the tree, and I was getting the bus and I was on the way to the presentation, and my best friend texted me and said, "Do you realise what day it is today?" I was like, "No." She said, "It's the anniversary of Alan Turing's death. It was the 7th of June. At that point, I just couldn't believe it. But by this time I kind of could believe it, because I was like, so many things are just lining up, and then being able to share it has been so incredible. I've now like written my adult book that like makes it a bit more like sophisticated. At one point I was sharing it just at like an art fair, and I had a big blank piece of paper that I put up and was teaching people how to do it. These kids drew this big colourful part, and then someone came and drew apparently a matrix, which I didn't really know what that does and what it's for. Someone else came along and explained how it worked, and I did it in colour down the bottom here. Then a maths professor said, "Oh, it's very pretty, but I'm not sure it'll work at that level." I said, "Oh, I got the answer 28/36 by doing this pattern." And he did it in pencil, and he got 28/36. And I couldn't believe it, that it was accurate. It also works at higher level. I really don't know where this thing has come from. That's the reason I'm now like confident enough to like make this video and tell this story, because it's resulted in something that makes sense. It's helping me make sense of other things. It's helping me see the world in a different way, understand sciences in a different way, process information and retain it, and understand that there are patterns everywhere and in the invisible world of numbers. Being able to present information in a completely different form, just as you would like a painting. You can work in all different directions. So here we've got 6 times 3 is 18, times 2 is 36, divided by 6 is 6, times 3 is 18, divided by 2 is 9, times 8 is 72, divided by 2 is 36, divided by 6 is 6, da 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 da. You can work round. And then I bit a banana. And I just looked at the seeds in the banana and the way that they are formed and the pattern there. I kind of spaced out for a moment and I thought, that looks like a calculation to me now. That circular form looks like a calculation. It's like a mandala, just like this image. And then I thought, wow, there's a way to understand maths and the beauty of mathematics, which obviously is like the foundation of the sciences, and recognize the patterns that repeat in like biology, like in a banana or in cells and then in chemistry. It's just really exciting me because it's like there's a whole new way to engage with understanding it. So say the seeds of a banana are like these parts and they show up, and that's still a calculation, but I can see that there's a structure there. And then it's like, oh, okay, so then that's in biology. And then in chemistry, we have the different molecules that link together and relate, and they form a pattern and a shape. And then in physics, you've got the central part, the electron and neurons, or the central atom, and then the things that spin around it. I don't know, and it kind of feels like there's a whole new language and structure to understand things, or the basis of it. And I really want to find a university or a research partner and some sort of organisation that could help me study this properly, because I'm an artist really, and I, as you can see, flap around and just follow my intuition and any idea that comes into my head. But I really feel ready now to really get my teeth stuck into researching a whole new way of learning, because I know that this isn't just something that is going to help me and has already helped me. I feel like it will help others. This whole experience has made me realise that maybe with different different minds all think and learn differently, for alternative education methods or children with special education needs, like what are we missing and what's been missed? Where would I have ended up if I had access to understand maths in this way when I was so desperately trying to understand when I was learning and as a kid? So yeah, please do get in touch, or please pass this on to anyone if you know anyone, and please explain that it's not as crazy as I look. Maybe I should take this off now. So that's pretty much where this story ends or pauses. I know that lots of it might seem a bit like OTT, or like I'm trying to force meaning into stuff, but there's just been so many events that have been so synchronistic, and the fact that sometimes I wasn't enjoying it at all. I was actually quite scared of it. But to feel that there's a potential that it's not just helping me, but it can help others, feels really special. What it's also like really encouraged me is that this world and approach that is art and making art is so important. I would never have arrived at this discovery had it not been through following artistic ideas like the story of the zebra, and the paintings and the pictures and the patterns all part of this discovery. Gosh, okay, now my skin is quite red. I'm now really fascinated by like the power of our subconscious, and I haven't read much Jung, but like I'm fascinated by what he was discovering or what he was looking into. And the dream thing, like when I didn't really tell many people at the beginning that I'd had that dream, because I thought that would make me sound, I don't know, it just felt very, in the word, spiritual. And the fact that it kind of gave me a visual sign of something that then in real life worked, it just felt a bit too out there to say. But then someone told me about Ramanujan, who was an Indian mathematician, incredible mind again, and to the point where I'm nowhere near comprehending what he was able to do and what actually he was doing mathematically. But a lot of what he claimed came from his subconscious and dreams and things like that. another level, but as in that made me think, okay, it is something that can happen. And learning about hypnopompia and hypnagogia, which are like states of sleep, and as you like fall asleep and wake up, your brain can sort of problem solve in different ways. One of the things that I found in this book, Carl Jung, Man and His Symbols, talking about an anima, which is like the feminine side of your personality, and it really struck a chord with me because of my zebra and my giraffe characters, Martha the giraffe and Deborah the zebra. But it said, what does the role of an anima as guide to the inner world mean in practical terms? This positive function occurs when a man takes seriously the feelings, moods, expectations, and fantasies sent by his anima, and when he fixes them in some form, for example, in writing, painting, sculpture, musical composition, or dancing. When he works at this patiently and slowly, other more deeply unconscious material wells up from the depths and connects with the earlier material. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to share. It feels like it's only just beginning. So if you know anything more, or you'd like to get involved or contact me about partnering for research with this method, and also just research into like the subconscious and problem solving in your subconscious and how all these connections are made, then please get in touch. If you're like from a university or organization, and if you'd like to support my work, you can support me monthly on patreon.com, or if you another sort of like funding board for forwarding this project, then please just send me an email. It was quite long, but I hope it was interesting. And yeah, that for now is the end of my rather bonkers story.